Welcome back to the Calculated Risk Podcast. I am Tyler Shoemaker, joined by KFord. Another weekend of college football is in the books. Washington, Oregon did not disappoint. Had me on the edge of my seat literally till the last 30 seconds of the game. That was awesome. Alabama got a bit of a scare from Arkansas, which did surprise me. I don't know about you, Kelley, but that surprised me. I did, I thought Arkansas would cover that game. I didn't think Alabama would blow them out, but that ended up being way closer than it should have been. Ohio State kind of exercised some demons and took care of business in West Lafayette for the first time in I don't know how long. So we had some really good games. It was a great full Saturday. Kelley, what were your initial thoughts from Saturday?
Yeah, it was a fantastic day of college football games, Tyler. As you said, Washington and Oregon did not disappoint. That was the number one game of the week. It lived up to the hype. I was really excited for Notre Dame USC, and Notre Dame took care of business, got things done. I can't say I'm too surprised Notre Dame won. I am surprised Notre Dame won in the fashion in which they did and made it look somewhat easy, I will say, at points of that game against a USC team that by all accounts is a good team, but has been falling consistently in my power ratings really for the last, month and a half. I mean, since the season started, they've just been falling. So those are probably the takeaways from the two biggest games. And I know we've got some interesting power ratings for this week, Tyler, and I know that's what we're going to dive into.
Yep. So let's get into the updated TSI and KFord ratings this week, already factoring in what happened in week 7. So I'll just run through my top 10 here real quick. Oklahoma's still number 1. They've been number 1 for the last month. Penn State jumps up to number 2. Obviously, huge game on tap that we'll definitely get into on the Thursday show, going to Columbus to take on Ohio State. Michigan, number 3, right behind them. Oregon drops to number 4 from number 2. So, not a big drop in the rankings. Their rating, I would have to check. I don't think they got downgraded much, if at all, in their rating. Washington right behind Oregon. So again, one of those situations where Washington wins the head-to-head, but still behind in the power rating. Ohio State number 6, Texas number 7, Florida State number 8, Notre Dame up to number 9, and Ole Miss at number 10 for me.
Yeah, my top 10, Tyler, I've got Ohio State remain number 1, Oklahoma remain number 2. Both those teams' power ratings increase slightly, but their rankings stay the same. Michigan up 1 spot to number 3, Penn State up to number 4. Oregon actually up a spot to number 5, Texas number 6, Florida State number 7, Washington number 8, Georgia down to number 9, and Alabama number 10. It's the lowest I've had Georgia in a couple years now. It's the lowest I've had Alabama, Tyler, since 2008. That's the last time Alabama has been number 10 or worse in the power ratings. I wasn't doing this in 2008, but the retroactive, historical KFord rating approximation project that I've been working on in the summers, 2008 is the last time Alabama was power rated number 10 or worse. So there's a lot to digest there. Oregon still being power rated ahead of Washington. That's one for sure. The quote unquote fall of Georgia and Alabama to where they are currently is another one. 3 Big Ten East teams for me in the top 4. I mean, it's remarkable what that division's shaping up to be. There's just so many things to break down right there at the top, and that's before we even get into some of the other interesting things in the top 30.
Yeah, I'm just looking here. I mean, I cannot believe the SEC this year just is not what we've grown accustomed to. Now, obviously, next year with realignment, Oklahoma and Texas being the SEC, and then this looks different. But for the time being, I mean, Ole Miss at number 10 is my highest ranked SEC team, and Georgia at number 9 is your highest ranked SEC team. So just a bit surprising that the conference has been so dominant, not only at the top, but, throughout the top half of the rankings generally. And that just has not really been the case so far this year. So that definitely jumps out to me. I mean, you mentioned the Big Ten East. I mean, dominant. Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State, all super high for both of us. Clemson kind of climbing back up there for me. Obviously they were off this week, but Duke continuing to look good. Like that obviously helps Clemson, even though Clemson got killed by them. I mean, I've got Clemson at number 20. You've got them 17. So, I mean, pretty close there. They're climbing back up. They had dropped, I think, down to like 40-ish for me at one point. So they're back up there, kind of where you'd expect to see them. Kansas State had a nice bounce back this week, taking care of business against Texas Tech after a bad loss to Oklahoma State last week. Anything with my rankings or ratings jump out to you, Kelley?
Yeah, Tyler, I think you touched on almost all the ones that stand out. We have very similar, power ratings here at the top in terms of their ordinal ranks. You have Oklahoma at 30.8 points per game above the FBS average team. I have Ohio State at number one at 29.6. So it does stand out to me that you have one, two, three, four teams that have a higher raw power rating than my highest team. So I'm seeing a little bit more of a separation of a top tier and a little bit pulling away from the pack for the top end of your numbers, Tyler, more so than mine are. But in terms of how the teams are ordinally ranked, Duke is one that we've talked about a couple times now for a couple weeks. You have them number 11. I now have them up this week to number 21. They're up 3 spots for me after a good win, up almost 2 points in the power ratings. And then, like I talked about, Georgia and Alabama. I mean, I have them at number 9 and number 10 in the power ratings. You have them number 12 and number 14, respectively. Like, to me, that says a ton about, and you said it, the relative strength of the SEC. Now, the SEC still doesn't have, many really bad teams. You can make a case for Vanderbilt, although the reason Georgia's been downgraded for each of us this past week and is in large part because of how Vanderbilt played against Georgia this week. So again, I'm not going to say Vanderbilt's a good team. They're probably not, like, objectively speaking, they're not. But outside of that, there's not like a quote bad team in the SEC, whereas most of the other conferences, have a bad team or multiple bad teams. Like, you look at the Big Ten, the bottom of the Big Ten is pretty darn bad, but the top of the Big Ten this year, I'll say, is better than the top of the SEC, at least as things stand right now. That's not me saying that an SEC team can't or won't win the national championship. They can, and they might, or they likely will, because if history is an indicator that they always do. But it's just right now, the way these teams are playing and what we've seen, the Big Ten, and specifically the Big Ten East, is the most dominant division with regard to the top teams. And even the Big Ten West. How about Iowa? I'm looking at your list really quickly, Tyler. I don't think Iowa's in your top 30.
Yeah, I was about to bring them up because I was looking at yours.
Okay.
I see Iowa in your
They snuck in
top
number
30
for me. Yep, snuck in number 30.
So,
that's up 6 spots. I mean, they were 36 last week.
So I actually have them 31. So they just missed the cut of making the graphic. The funny thing with Iowa, though, I just put out shortly before we record this here on Sunday night, I put out my top 40 resume ranking, and Iowa is number 10. And because of they have a good strength of schedule to date. So they're number 10, and that seems to be what I'm taking the most heat for right now on Twitter, because Iowa's in the top 10 in the resume ranking, which is pretty funny because, again, like, if I can manually override it, I would, because they are the worst, like, good record football team I've ever seen in my life. They're so actually bad, but they just skate by, and it drives me insane. Now, talk about the Breaking Bad gif of Jesse. That's Iowa. They can't keep getting away with this.
That's good. It's applicable. I mean, it's kind of like the 2015 Michigan State team, right? That was the anomaly team of really the CFP era, probably, in terms of this team deserves to be here based on their resume. But from a power rating standpoint, they are not one of the best. Forget 4. They're not one of the best 10. That was best 15 teams in the country. People last year tried to say TCU. TCU was still going into the playoff, a top 10 power rated team. Now, they weren't like the elite top 2 or 3, but they were a top 10 power rating team going in, and they had the resume to back it up. Same thing with Michigan State, except in 2015, except they weren't kind of even a top 10 power rating team. Iowa is a similar way. So, Tyler, we're recording this on Sunday night. I'll post the most deserving rankings on Monday morning. So by the time this comes out, they'll be out. So I can say it. Iowa, for me, is number 12 in the most deserving. So, I mean, they're not far behind where you have them. And again, you look at it and you're like, is this right? Does it make sense? And it's like, well, yeah, look at what they've accomplished relative to, what would be expected against their schedule. So are they going to, continue to win out? And are they going to keep it going? If you look forward at their schedule, and I know that's not what this episode is, but if you just quickly glance at their schedule, as I pull it up really quickly, that hasn't been updated with the new numbers, but my numbers aren't going to make them an underdog in any remaining game. And so,
no,
hey, listen, when you have an offense as bad as this, you can lose a game where you're a favorite. Like, no doubt. I would be surprised if Iowa goes 11-1. Like, I'll say that, even though the numbers say, hey, they'll be projected as a favorite. But if they keep winning, Iowa's going to be in the mix. I mean, if they're 11-1 going into the Big Ten championship game, and they somehow win that game, I don't care who they're playing. If they're playing Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, if they somehow win that game and they are 12-1 Big Ten champs, Iowa is in the playoff. Like, Iowa is in the playoff, which sounds crazy. I'm telling you right now, they're in the playoff.
They would have to be the worst playoff. If that happened, they would be the worst playoff team of the CFP era, no doubt. Yeah, looking
Until
at
next year.
looking at the rest of their schedule. I mean, the lowest win probability I give them is 60% against Rutgers. I mean, Minnesota 78, Northwestern 80, Illinois 80, Nebraska 64. I mean, we've already spent too much time on Iowa. Right, Kirk and Brian Ferentz don't deserve this much respect on a show as prestigious as ours.
It's funny where it go, man. But yeah, I'm looking at what else you got up here. Those are the ones that really stand out to me. Again, group of 5 teams, they're showing up on yours. They're just missing the cut on mine. So what you've got Air Force in there, you've got SMU in there, you've got Liberty in there. If I go to my power rating tab and I see where I have mine, they just missed it. I took some heat for it from somebody. Actually, just said your Power 5 bias is unmanageable now or something, unfollow. And I was like, well, I'm sorry to see you go, buddy. I don't know what to tell you, that your teams aren't where you want them to be. I have SMU 32. I have Air Force 37. I have Tulane 38. I have James Madison 44. Troy 49, Fresno 50. Gosh, I got to go a long way to Liberty, dude. 57 is where I have Liberty right now, Tyler. So that stands out to me too. Your group of 5 sneaking in there in the 20s. Mine, not so much. They kind of enter in the 30s.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, looking at, Maryland was a team that was another team this week. Like after the Ohio State game last week, I was like, all right, I want to bet against Maryland if at all possible next week. My number didn't quite align with that, so I didn't bet against them, but I just knew they were in such a terrible spot coming off the Ohio State game that they, was their Super Bowl. And of course they have the letdown. They lose outright as 2 touchdown favorites to Illinois. I mean, that's just a bad loss, but to be expected from Mike Loxley and company at Maryland. Louisville, kind of a similar situation. Huge win last week. Terrible spot this week, playing Pitt. That's the Narduzzi special. Pitt beats them by 17 points. So, some of these teams trending down. I'm curious kind of how they respond to those losses. But yeah, that's really all that sticks out to me. I mean, A&M and Tennessee, we both have them right next to each other after they played a pretty competitive game this weekend. You've got Utah at 23. I've got them around 40. Their offensive rating did tick up this week after scoring 34, but I mean, Cal's defense is just so bad. I had a bet on Cal plus 13.5 in that game. Utah gave Cal every opportunity to score again, and Cal just couldn't do it. They tripped all over themselves. But yeah, Utah jumps out. They've got a big one coming up this week that I'm sure we'll talk about as well with USC. See if USC can bounce back in that spot. So we're gonna have a lot of good games to talk about on the Thursday show. Looking ahead to week 8. But Kelley, anything else here before we wrap this one up?
No, man, I think, again, at this point of the season, we really know who these teams are. And it doesn't mean that we're not going to get surprises, that we're not going to have teams shift, 3-4 points in the power rating in any given week. But we're really dialed in at this point. And I'll speak for my own model, Tyler. I know yours is doing well too. Like, the model's really got a good handle on what these teams are and what they aren't. Where are they deficient? Where are they strong? It happens every year around the halfway point. Vegas is getting sharper. The power raters are getting sharper. The surprises are becoming fewer and farther between. And so with that in mind, every single game that's coming up here is going to be huge for these teams. We're entering kind of the stretch run, if you will. And I know it's only mid-October, but we're getting to that point. I mean, we're only a couple of weeks away from the first CFP rankings, right? And so resumes are changing less and less each week. But in those select spots where you've got the big time matchups, I mean, you talk about Ohio State and Penn State coming up here this week. For me right now, most deserving wise, I have Ohio State number 4. They're down 1 spot. Washington jumped over them. And Penn State is number 10. They're up 1 spot from last week. The winner of that game is going to get a huge bump in their resume. But those huge bumps are, again, becoming fewer and farther between, because at this stage of the season, each individual game that you're adding to your resume, quote, counts less than any previous game before it. Because now for Ohio State and Penn State, this is their 7th game. This game counts as 1/7 of their resume. Whereas early in the year, say game 3, that's 1/3. So your resume is changing 33%. Now it's changing 1/7. Next week, it'll change 1/8. So teams are really starting to settle into the resume rankings too, with the exception of these massive showdowns like we have Ohio State and Penn State and some others this week. So that to me is just something to keep in the back of your mind as we're looking forward and trying to figure out, where are these teams going to be. You want to start getting into a good spot now in the resumes because it's harder to move significant distances in that, whether it's up or down, later we get in the year.
Yep, for sure. And that just sparked a thought. Why don't we run through our top 10 of our resume? Do you have your resume rankings done?
I do. They're not out yet, but by the time this episode is, they will be.
You want to run through our top 10 real quick?
Let's do it.
So, all right. So top 10 resume ranking from the TSI: Washington number 1, Oklahoma 2, Florida State 3, North Carolina 4, Ohio State 5, Michigan 6, Texas 7, Penn State 8, Alabama 9, and Iowa 10 for me.
Okay, so all of your top 10 end up in my top 12. There are 2 teams missing from your top 10 that I have in there. I'll be curious to see where you have them ranked, Tyler. Here's my top 10 most deserving teams after week 7. Oklahoma holds on to the number 1 spot. Florida State holds on to number 2. Washington jumps from number 10 up to number 3 following their win against Oregon. That bumps Ohio State down to number 4. Texas also falls 1 spot to number 5. North Carolina is up to number 6. Previous number 6 was Louisville, and Louisville took a dive. They're now down to number 23. So North Carolina slides up to number 6. Alabama was 5 last week. They now fall to number 7, even though they picked up a win. Ole Miss was 9 last week. They did not play this week. They are now up to 8. Georgia was 8 last week. They beat Vanderbilt, and they fall to number 9. So that's interesting. Georgia fell behind a team that did not play. People are going to lose their minds about that. Guys, it's how when you look at the totality of the resume and you compare what has this team achieved relative to what would be expected, this is the resulting list. Like that's all it is. That's as simple as it is. I'm not against Georgia. I'm not for Ole Miss or any other team. That is what this is. This is an objective view of the resumes and what's been accomplished relative to expected. So Georgia falls to number 9, and then Penn State, I mentioned earlier, they're up from number 11 to number 10. The 2 that you had in your top 10 that I don't, Michigan, number 11 for me. Iowa, all the way up from number 24 following their win at Wisconsin. They are now number 12. So where do you have, Tyler? I think the 2 that I had.
Ole Miss and Georgia.
Yeah, where do you have those?
Yep. Right outside 11 and 12. Ole Miss 11, Georgia 12. So
there you go. So our top 12 teams are the same, just in a different order.
Wow, that's crazy because I mean, in case we haven't mentioned this, like we don't discuss these with each other as we're putting, like it's our formulas, and like I'm hearing his for the first time right now. So that's really cool that we have the same top 12 in some order. Just kind of adds credibility to the fact that like these probably are the top 12 resumes in the country. One team, real quick before we get out of here, one team that I am curious about, they've got a big game this week on Thursday night. James Madison, 6-0, plays at Marshall on Thursday. Where do you have them? I have them number 13 in my resume ranking.
I have a number 18. They're up from number 20. I've been saying now for 2 weeks, maybe even 3, like rank the Dukes. I don't know. Did the AP rank them? Are they in the AP rankings?
I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't look.
I don't even know. James Madison for me is number 18. So yeah, you have them at 13. I was going to ask who you have 13 because I actually have sitting at 13 a 2-loss team. LSU for me is number 13. So they're my highest 2-loss. Tyler, I want to get your highest 2-loss, who it is, where they're ranked, and then also what about your highest 3-loss? Because I actually have Texas A&M chilling at number 30. They're 4-3. And they're number 30 for me. 1 spot, get this, 1 spot above your darlings, Liberty, who are 6-0. I have 6-0 Liberty, 31 in the most deserving, and 4-3 Texas A&M, number 30, which I'm sure is going to make all the G5 lovers love me. So,
yeah. So I have Liberty is right behind James Madison for me. So my 13 and 14 are James Madison and Liberty.
Where's Air Force? You have Liberty above Air Force?
Air Force is 17.
Oh.
Air Force, in terms of their strength of schedule to date, Air Force is minus 8.3 average opponent power rating, and Liberty is a minus 6.9. So they're about a point and a half better in terms of their average opponent. So that's why.
Okay. Who's your highest 2-loss? Sorry.
2-loss. LSU is my highest 2-loss at 25. So it sounds to me like we probably do something similar with it sounds like I maybe penalize a loss more perhaps because I have LSU highest 2 loss at 25. Highest 3 loss is Texas A&M at number 40 for me. So it sounds like we're pretty much in line with how we do things. I'm just punishing teams more for a loss, perhaps. But yeah, we're pretty similar in terms of the logic there.
Interesting. I like it. It's good stuff, man. Yeah, I like touching on the most deserving and the resume. So if we have those in time for this show on recording Sunday night, we can do that. I like it.
Yeah, for sure. It makes me feel good because I mean, this is like you're the best at that. So for me, I feel good that my numbers are somewhat in line with where yours are, because this is a newer exercise for me. So glad that I'm, not making a complete fool of myself with this.
Dude, you know what? The thing about making a fool of yourself, the people that get mad and angry and all that, like one simple response, which I would get tired of saying if I said it every time it was appropriate. Oh, okay. You're criticizing mine. I get it. Sounds good. What's your list? Like, show me your list. Show me your power
Yeah.
ratings. Show me your resume rankings. Like, where do you have them? Oh, blah, blah. Okay. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
Next.
That's my go-to. I always say, like, I look forward to seeing your rankings,
like,
your ratings.
Come on, man. Like, people are crazy on social media, dude. I'm starting to get distraught about it again. I just gotta like let things go. But people they're just so dumb, Tyler. But it's okay. All right, it's all good. Keep it positive.
Yeah, my personal favorite was the guy that told me like it was the most insane clickbaity thing he had ever seen in his life, and I'm like, I'm getting paid for clicks on Twitter. That's me. All right, we're venting now. That's gonna do it for the Week 7 recap. We'll be back on Thursday, looking ahead to all the marquee games of Week 8. We've got some really good ones again on tap, so can't wait to get into that with you, Kelley. Until next time, for KFord, I'm Tyler Shoemaker, and that was Calculated Risk.